Guys, I'm excited about the fragrances I'm going to talk to you about today. It's from the house of Nishane. They have a new collection called the Time Capsule Collection, and I discovered this collection at Essence back in June, a couple months ago. And as soon as I heard about it and heard who the perfumers were, I got really excited and really curious about how the fragrances smell. So Nishane has partnered with IFF perfumers, 4 different perfumers, and they have created 4 fragrances for them, each perfumer creating their own fragrance. And I'm going to talk to you about the 4 today in this video coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yes, today I'm talking about the latest fragrances from the house of Nishane. They have launched 4 fragrances with 4 different perfumers, and they are from IFF, International Flavors and Fragrances, and very well-known perfumers of Flipo. We've got Jean-Louis Sieuzac. We've got Dominique Ropion, my favorite perfumer, and then we also have Carlos Benaim. The 4 fragrances in alphabetical order are Kredo, we've got Papilefiko, we've got Tempfluo, and then we've got Tero. So I've been wearing and testing these out for the last couple of months, and I've got to tell you, one of them garners me compliments that I have not had before, which is great. So initially I liked another fragrance a little more than the one that garners me compliments, but because it garners me compliments, I'm going to select that as my #1 fragrance. And the way I'm going to do this video is I'm going to start talking about the first fragrance and my favorite fragrance, and then the next favorite fragrance, and then so on. So we're going to talk about Tempfluo first. This is the one that garners me compliments. I love wearing this one. As you can see, I've worn quite a bit of it. It smells quite fantastic, and this is created by Flipo. If you don't know her, she's created the last fragrance for Frederic Malle last year called Synthetic Jungle. So she works with IFF, International Flavors and Fragrances, and they have now created, she and 3 other perfumers have created fragrances for Nishane. So this is the first time I've seen these big name perfumers creating fragrances for a very hyped brand like Nishane, which is very, very cool for me. And Tempfluo is the fragrance that garners me compliments. Initially, it was another fragrance that was my favorite, but I moved up this fragrance to my #1 spot. It was my #2 favorite fragrance because of the compliments. Just a really, really exciting thing that happens when you get compliments from a fragrance. The way I get compliments is I work downtown, the studio's downtown, so I initially just spray some fragrance on and I go out, and the fragrance is pretty fresh on me, and I seem to get quite a bit of compliments because of doing that. So this is Flipo's fragrance, and it features notes of bergamot, mandarin, saffron in the top notes. Heart notes features jasmine, sambac, orange flower, and praline. And finally in the base notes we've got cashmere wood, cedarwood, and vanilla. So this to me is a sweet, floral, woody fragrance experience, and the sweetness comes in here from floral notes, and in this case we've got that orange flower. Orange flower is pretty prominent, and I do like this note quite a bit. Orange flower, orange blossom, similar notes, and it's very, very stand out in this particular fragrance against a lot of other things that are going on. We've got the citruses of the bergamot and mandarin, so it really complements the citruses up top when the fragrance is initially sprayed on. It also has that saffron note, so it's got this kind of aromatic spiciness, a little bit of a leathery touch when you first spray the fragrance on. But in the heart, of course, you've got not only that orange flower, you've also got some jasmine sambac, and I feel like these really work wonderfully together, the bergamot mandarin with the orange flower, and I feel like orange flower works really wonderfully with jasmine sambac. They complement each other. So the only odd man out there is that saffron note, which is a nice contrast to what's going on in the top and the heart. Eventually this goes down and becomes musky and very, very woody with a little bit of sweetness. And of course we've got that praline in the heart notes as well, which kind of like segues into that kind of vanillic sweetness here. Really a delicious fragrance. I wouldn't call this something like Love Don't Be Shy because it's got that orange flower and vanilla experience. It's not. It's different. The thing I have to say is it kind of sort of reminds me a little bit of Synthetic Jungle from Flipo, who she made for Frederic Malle. Not identical whatsoever. I think there's a little bit of a floral touch in here that kind of reminds me of that one, but I like it. I like this, reminder. It kind of reminds me of that fragrance, but also kind of reassures me that this is her signature. I'm wearing something that she's created. Now that I'm so familiar with wearing synthetic jungle, there's that little reminder here, and it's got her signature touch kind of a thing. But this to me was my second favorite fragrance. I've moved it up to the top of the list. It's become my favorite because compliments were very, very positive with this one, because I like that whole sweet citrusy experience with that kind of lightly, very, very lightly gourmand contrast, and of course the musky, woody experiences in the base notes. So Tempfluo is my favorite in the new Time Capsule collection from Nishane. And then at number 2, which was my favorite fragrance when I first smelled it, this is Kredo, this one right here. Kredo to me is a very masculine offering, whereas Tempfluo can be thought of as a more feminine leaning experience. Not necessarily ultra feminine, it's just unisex, but with the flowers and things, it does lean to the feminine side a little bit, or yeah, in that scale. Kredo to me, on the other hand, is a very, very masculine. This is a fragrance that I really thought was a great scent when I first smelled it. It's actually quite beautiful with all the spices and woods in here, and it does have a little bit of a reminder of something like Tom Ford's Oud Wood, but a different take on it. But this is created by Jean-Louis Sieuzac, another IFF perfumer, and it's a really, really great smelling fragrance. I think the way these fragrances wear, they're very robust, and they have a concentration that's like really, really stand out. Like you can experience their highly concentrated oils in these fragrances. It's, the fact that they smell so great, and you can also experience how concentrated they are, is definitely a plus for me. But Kredo features notes of pink pepper, cardamom. Heart features notes of Osmanthus absolute. Base features notes of oud, sandalwood, and suede. But a beautiful fragrance. It sprays spicy. It's a fresh, spicy experience. Eventually, it does add some warmth when it's drying down, but the fragrance itself is a very fresh, spicy. Pink pepper, cardamom has this fresh spiciness, pungent spiciness at the top. You experience that right away. And I think here I'm kind of reminded of Tom Ford's Oud Wood, because Tom Ford's Oud Wood has that cardamom note as well. They go in different directions, but you know, it's kind of like combining oud and cardamom, which is the signature there with Tom Ford. It's here as well. So in the heart, there's a little bit of a light sweetness and fruitiness, very, very light from the Osmanthus. There's definitely a little bit of apricot-y kind of an experience with the Osmanthus note, but also a little bit of leatheriness from the Osmanthus note as well. Lightly smoky, a little bit tea-like from this note in the heart notes. So it accentuates and adds that light fruitiness to the leathery experience here, because we've got a little bit of a leathery touch in the base notes. But then eventually the oud comes in, and the sandalwood, it's so woody, oudy, and then you've got that suede leather here. Nice segue from the leatheriness of the Osmanthus absolute to that suede leather in the base notes. So great. This is really, really great. Very, very pungent. I like it. It's got that cardamom. It's in your face, strong, and definitely leaning masculine here, whereas we had Tempfluo going a little feminine, and this one's going a little masculine. Of course, they're both unisex fragrances. These two are definitely my favorite fragrances. Definitely the standouts in the collection to me. And as I said, Kredo was 1 before and Tempfluo was number 2, but I've switched them around because how positive people react to Tempfluo for me when I wear it. It smells really great on me. I really like those kind of fragrances, because sometimes fragrances smell great out of a bottle, and you want that smell to be on you as well. Sometimes they don't, you know, but that one really does smell great on me. It just also kind of like blends with me and just creates a really, really beautiful aroma coming off of me, if that makes sense. So my third favorite fragrance in this collection is Tero, which is created by Carlos Benaim. So sadly, my favorite perfumer's fragrance in this collection is my least favorite fragrance. I don't know why that happened, but it happened that way. But Carlos Benaim's fragrance is quite nice. In fact, it's not that distantly far away, whereas Papilefiko, which is the 4th fragrance created by Dominique Ropion, is this distant behind, because I'm not really digging that one. Tero, on the other hand, is quite nice with this kind of like weirdly salty caramel experience with a little bit of like cumin spice thrown in or something, which I get from this particular fragrance. But it features notes of salted caramel, black pepper, Sichuan pepper. In the heart notes, you've got patchouli, cinnamon bark. Finally, in the base notes, you've got vetiver, amber, oak wood. So it's an interesting interesting contrast of warmth and cold together, because you've got cinnamon, which is a warm spice. You've got the patchouli in the heart, which is earthy. But up top, we've got a little bit of warmth from that caramel, which is contrasted with, you know, the freshness from the salt. Black pepper, Sichuan pepper adds a freshness to the fragrance. So it's all about contrasts here with a little bit of warmth, because in the base notes, you've got a little amber, and you've got that earthy vetiver and the oak wood. But for me, when you first spray the fragrance, it's just salty and caramelly. It's a little bit of a sweet experience, but it's contrasted with the spiciness from the black pepper, and then that spiciness from the Sichuan pepper. But the Sichuan pepper has a light lemony tinge to it, so you have that kind of contrast here with the spiciness, and then of course the saltiness, the caramel, and then of course a little bit of that citrus. But you know, cinnamon bark does develop. You do experience it. It adds warmth to the fragrance. You know, and it's contrasted with that patchouli, which I think is a really great note here. It really does blend beautifully with all the notes. I like patchouli in fragrances, not only as a main note, because I love the smell of patchouli, but here it really does complement what's going on up top, and kind of like to you know, segue into the heart notes and to contrast against the spices and the salty caramel up top. But finally the fragrance settles to the kind of a woodiness. There's the oak wood and the vetiver, and then some light sweetness from the amber, because this does settle to an ambery experience. But there's a cuminy touch coming through this fragrance somewhere that I quite like. It could be the cinnamon bark where it's kind of playing tricks on me, but that adds a little bit of a sexiness to this fragrance. So I like that about this particular fragrance. So it is number 3 in the list, but eventually when I ranked the fragrances, I had to put this at number 3. But still, it's a solid release, and I could be, you know, tossing it up between Kredo, which is at number 2, versus Tero. But right now I feel like Tero is number 3. And sadly, as I said, my least favorite of the bunch is Papilefiko. And I'm a fan of Dominique Ropion's fragrances. I really love his fragrances. I love Portrait of a Lady and a lot of other things he's created. But this one to me seems like it's more of a mass release. This one's probably going to have the most fans with, you know, the non-perfume loving community. It just smells like a very pleasant fragrance. Soft, spicy, and earthy and woody is basically key here. So top notes: cardamom, coriander, citruses. Heart notes: lavender, artemisia, jasmine. Base notes: fir balsam, moss, and styrax. So definitely green woods, lots of spices, because you start off with a very spicy, you know, blast. That pungent cardamom appears here quite strongly. It's really, really big, and contrasted with the citruses along with the coriander. I like these two spices, cardamom, coriander. They're great spices in fragrances, and they do kind of lean masculine to me. This is definitely a masculine leaning fragrance. In fact, I feel like the entire collection leans a little masculine, except for Tempfluo, which happens to be my favorite, garners me compliments. You know, with this one, you get the herbal touches from the lavender and artemisia in the heart. There's a little bit of a floralcy, not too much. It's not very, very floral. For me, it can act a little bit like a fougere-like experience, but not quite. It's a little different. There's, you know, freshness around the fragrance, but eventually it does settle to a little bit of a warmth in the base. So it has a fir balsam in the base and the oak moss, or the moss note, and that styrax adds the warmth to this fragrance. It covers up pretty much, you know, it adds like a soft spiciness to the fragrance, because most of the fragrance is very, very fresh. So there's a fresh, spicy, fresh, woody experience here, but that styrax does kind of cover it up a little bit and kind of adds this like soft spiciness and soft warmth to the fragrance, which is a nice contrast with the freshness against the warmth, if that makes sense. So it creates a bit of a warmth. You know, the color of this one is definitely right on. That's exactly the color I'm experiencing with this fragrance. In fact, even Tempfluo is very, very similar. The other ones, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe Kredo, I feel like it's a little more grays, because it does have a kind of a muted experience. With Tero, going more into the kind of like a blues and green, and not greens, but yellows and oranges in here. But yeah, I guess there's a little bit of orange there, right there. But either way, those are my thoughts with these fragrances. I think they're really, really solid fragrances. And even though They're created by the IFF perfumers who create fragrances for really big brands, like designers and things like that. They definitely have accomplished really quality offerings in the extrait de parfum concentration, because these are all extrait de parfum concentration. And as I was saying earlier, you can experience the concentration. They're really heavy experiences. So even though they usually don't do these kind of concentration fragrances, these perfumers, most of them, do the eau de toilettes and eau de parfums, they definitely listened to Nishane correctly and delivered some really awesome fragrances. Sad I didn't care for Papilefiko as much as I wanted to, even though he is my favorite perfumer. I felt like, to me, it's more mass. It just feels like I can find his fragrances other places. But Tempfluo, so good. This is the standout here, and I love the way it smells on me. It's unique. It's very special. And those compliments are even better with that one. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the new Nishane Time Capsule Collection fragrances. Have you sampled these yet? Do you have interest in any of them? Let me know which one sounds the best to you. Put a comment down so I can find out. But either way, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, do list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.